Yeah.
I was wondering.
Do you need something?
No.
Okay. So in the very first video at the beginning, I noted that uh, there's a variety of different ways you can think of analytic philosophy. And we spent the first few videos focusing on one way of thinking of analytic philosophy. That is, thinking of it as the movement which says that the analysis of language is what philosophy is, that philosophy just is the analysis of language, hence the word analytic in analytic philosophy. In this segment, we're going to just very briefly talk about another way of thinking about what analytic philosophy is. And the idea here is this, that analytic philosophy begins with a particular philosopher or a particular set of philosophers investigating a very specific set of problems in a particular way. So there's a particular sort of unique way of investigating a particular set of problems, and then there's reaction to that way, to that philosopher's work or that set of philosophers' work, and reactions to those reactions, and so on and so forth. And you can think of analytic philosophy as kind of a lineage. It begins with an initial birth from a particular philosopher investigating a particular set of problems in a particular way, and it proceeds with all of those who are reacting to that philosopher's investigation either directly or indirectly by reacting to those who react to that philosopher's investigation. And if you think of philosophy in this way, then analytic philosophy in this way, then the plausible founder is this man, Gottlieb Frege. So Gottlieb Frege was a mathematician, a German mathematician, and he was very concerned about the foundations of mathematics. He wanted to know sort of what's the ultimate justification for believing mathematical truths. That was his, or at least one way of thinking about his main research program. And he tried to address that issue partly by reducing math to logic, by showing that mathematics is all built out of logic. And this raises a whole slew of questions. And among the questions he investigated while trying to show that mathematics reduces to logic so that he could explain how it is that we are justified in believing mathematical claims, he introduced a variety of interesting distinctions in philosophy of language. And those distinctions, and more generally his project of trying to show that mathematics reduces to logic, you can think of as sort of the founding moment in analytic philosophy. At least many people think of it that way. And then there's a variety of figures who come after or were working around the same time and engaged with Frege's work, and then people who engaged with their work, and so on and so forth. And analytic philosophy is that kind of movement, beginning with Frege and flowing onwards. Who are these other figures? Well, I'll name a few. This is Elizabeth Constance Jones. She was writing around the same time as Frege, engaging with similar issues in a somewhat similar way. Her work was not nearly as prominent, although when we talk about Kripke later on, you'll see that her work in many ways, it wasn't more sophisticated than Frege's, but in some ways it was more sophisticated. That is, I think she was getting things closer to right in many ways. There's Bertrand Russell, who picked up Frege's work and wrote interesting things about it, including sort of decimating some of Frege's insights while leaving many of his central insights intact. There's Ludwig Wittgenstein, whom many consider to be the most brilliant student of Bertrand Russell. There's Susan Stebbing, another British philosopher. There's Rudolf Carnap, another German philosopher. There's Willard Van Orman Quine, a student of Carnap. There's Ruth Barkett Marcus, an important figure in inventing modal logic. And there's Saul Kripke, another important figure in discovering modal logic. And the person who kind of finally put the death nail in many of the views in philosophy of language that Frege put forth and that dominated subsequent thinking up until Kripke. He's not alone in this. I don't want to put forward some kind of great man view of philosophy. Ruth Barkett Marcus had similar ideas to Kripke. Hilary Putnam also had similar ideas. We're just looking at, a handful of the many, many philosophers in this tradition. And the idea on this way of thinking about analytic philosophy is that analytic philosophy begins with Gottlieb Frege addressing some particular set of issues in a very unique way, and it flows from there with people thinking about what Frege said and reacting to what Frege said. So we'll stop this short video there, and next time we'll go over some background.